Too far? He'll chase after it. Oh, what a...
Keegan Murray, a 6'8" forward out of the University of Iowa, was one of college basketball's top performers this past season. After a quiet freshman year in which Murray only started 4 games, he broke out as a sophomore, on his way to averaging 23 points per game for the Big Ten champion Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, there's rumors that he could go in the top 5, as NBA teams view him as an NBA-ready performer on both sides of the floor. While Murray only shot 30% from 3 his freshman season, he shot 40% his sophomore year, and his three-point shooting is looked at as one of his biggest strengths as he heads into the NBA. He projects as a near-elite catch-and-shoot three-point shooter in the NBA. The second positive is his transition play. Murray, as a ball handler pushing the pace, was a menace last season. He attacked seams using his strength in order to get his way to the rim, and he was also solid as a lane filler as well. The third positive is Murray's defensive versatility. Murray is best defensively against forwards, however, he might have the length and the strength to be able to guard some 5s in the NBA, and he's also solid enough laterally to be a potential option to throw against guards at the next level. While Murray doesn't project as an elite defender against any one spot or type of player, he projects as a guy that can guard 3 to 5 positions, as well as being a guy that you have no worries with putting him on or off the ball defensively. The fourth positive is Murray's low post play. He was very solid as a scorer in the low post in college and possesses a good feel and good footwork down on the low block. The final positive is that he has a clear-cut NBA role. Murray should make an immediate impact as a forward who can hit threes as well as defend multiple positions. Here are some areas of improvement for Murray, the first one of which is his ball handling. While Murray is good at attacking the rim due to his size and his fluidity, his ball handling leaves a lot to be desired. Murray didn't handle the ball much in pick and rolls, so it was hard to get a feel for this area of his game, but even while scoring a high clip in college, Murray's ball handling never impressed, and this fed into some struggles in playmaking. Murray's role last year was either to score and get himself a bucket, or draw multiple defenders and kick out to a myriad of shooters. He wasn't used much as an initiator or a pick and roll ball handler, and while he did have some impressive flashes of passing ability, his playmaking and his passing still isn't something that projects as a positive on the NBA level. The third area of struggle for Murray is his explosiveness. While he is a fluid athlete and isn't necessarily challenged on this end, he also isn't the most explosive player either and doesn't possess a great first step. This is something that could become more evident in the NBA when he's trying to drive against more physical defenders. And the fourth question mark with Keegan Murray is his long-term NBA upside. While he does possess a very high floor, and I would be shocked if he's not a role player, his subpar ball handling ability, playmaking ability, some lack of explosiveness, and very few collegiate reps as a pick and roll ball handler have some concern with his chances to become more than that. So I'm not going to waste any time with coming out on the record and saying that I'm not as high on Keegan Murray as I am with some other prospects in this draft. Now, Keegan Murray is a perfect case of trying to determine how his game translates to the NBA, because if you look at him in college, he was absolutely fantastic. 23 points per game is no easy achievement at all, leading an Iowa team to a lot of regular season success and success in the Big Ten tournament. Unfortunately, their run ended short in the first round of the NCAA tournament against Richmond. I will also be honest and say I had Iowa in my Final Four, and that didn't pan out, but no hard feelings from that game whatsoever. Keegan Murray is just a guy who got some things done in college, and it's questionable if he's going to be able to score in the same way in the NBA. I think he's going to be a little bit different of a player in the NBA than he was in his sophomore year at Iowa, and determining his long-term upside is really the key in determining Keegan Murray as a prospect, because I haven't heard any concerns with his NBA floor. I haven't heard anybody project him to be a bust. I think it's pretty obvious that this dude can come in right away and be a key contributor to an NBA team. He plays defense and he knocks down threes, and he can tack a little bit off the dribble and use his body inside, and he doesn't make a ton of mistakes, doesn't force too much either. He's a guy that fits in as a role player in the NBA. People that are higher on him project him as somebody that could potentially be a 20 point per game scorer at the next level. I don't have a ton of confidence in that happening simply because he isn't that great of a ball handler, hasn't run much in the pick and roll, and when you're looking at guys potentially becoming star caliber contributors, most of the time, unless they are a big man, and honestly most of the big men have to do this as well, to become a star, you have to be able to handle the ball, you have to be able to facilitate some of the offense, and create from the perimeter off the dribble. In the NBA, that's harder to do than college. There are certain guys in college that get by based on their size and their strength, and just being good enough with their handle, and good enough in terms of, you know, their first step, and that sort of thing, to be able to really make a living in college attacking off the dribble. But in the NBA, if you're not a little bit more creative with your handle, if you're not shifty as a player, you're not just going to get to the rim consistently. In the NBA, you're not able to straight line drive past people to the rim unless you're freakishly quick and athletic, or unless you're a LeBron or a Giannis level physical specimen. I don't think Keegan Murray is either of those things, therefore I don't think his self-creation off the dribble translates super well from college to the NBA. A lot of people just like to look at the fact that he scored well in college, but in terms of projecting prospects to the next level, you have to look at how their game translates from college to the NBA. It's two completely different styles of basketball even. The game is played differently, and the NBA is quicker and more physical, and you're not able to get by unless you have a high level of skill off the dribble as a scorer. Now, don't get me wrong, Keegan Murray could develop this, but he is probably going to be the oldest player drafted in the top 7 or 8 picks at 21 years old on draft night. So it's not like this dude is 19 years old like a lot of other prospects. It's not like this dude is a Jalen Duren who won't even be 19 on draft night. However, I do expect him to improve his ball handling and become sharper with his dribble. The other factor that I look at in terms of trying to project self-creation ability is simply how guys move. If they're quick with their feet, if they're able to switch their hips quickly, if they're light on their feet, if they have a solid first step, and that sort of thing. If somebody struggles handling the ball but possesses those traits with their movement, then I have more confidence in them long-term becoming a guy who can create off the dribble. Their ball handling just needs to catch up to their movement ability and potentially their athletic ability. With Keegan Murray, I'm not a huge fan of the way he moves with his dribble either. I don't think it's a situation where his ball handling is holding him back from being this shifty player or this guy that is good with his footwork and able to create super well from the perimeter. Now, in transition, where he has seams, he's able to use his body really well, and I think that could translate more to the NBA where he has seams to attack, and if he can be a deadly enough shooter, he will be able to attack closeouts and get into the paint that way, but that is more of a very high tier role player to me, instead of a guy that you can give the ball and he's going to run your offense or be a go-to scorer or be a 22-23 point per game guy. I'm not bullish on Keegan Murray's all-star potential or him reaching his ceiling. I think his ceiling is a little bit lower than some people give it credit for, and where you fall on Keegan Murray's ceiling and his chances to reach it is probably going to determine how much you like Keegan Murray as a prospect. In terms of his floor, I think he comes in and could potentially start right away. In terms of his floor, I mean, I guess the worst case scenario is maybe his sophomore year at Iowa gives people some false confidence in his shooting ability, considering he didn't even shoot 30% in his freshman year at Iowa. If his shooting isn't as good as he showed his sophomore year in college, then maybe he's a guy who's not going to be that good of an NBA shooter. If he's just an okay NBA shooter, I could see him still being a role player, but maybe not as good of a role player as people expect. And honestly, I would be surprised if he shoots below 34-35% at the next level, and being a guy that can play solid defense and shoot 35% from a forward position is at least a guy that you bring off the bench, because NBA teams love some 3-and-D players, even if they're mediocre three-point shooters. If they have some size and they can play solid defense and shoot a solid 3-ball, they usually end up getting minutes on an NBA team. So I think that Keegan Murray's floor is getting minutes for at least a solid NBA team. As far as the ceiling goes, I could see him being a Tobias Harris type of scorer, maybe with a little bit of Jeremy Grant in him. We've seen Jeremy Grant develop his off the dribble game a little bit. He's not the best playmaker or passer, but he has shown some flashes in that regard, and I think that's kind of the same way with Keegan Murray. So I think that is what I would project Keegan Murray's ceiling to be. Of course, as I said in a previous draft profile, nobody would have projected Nikola Jokic's ceiling to be a 2-time MVP, and that's what he's become. So I've always felt like people are a little bit too low in regards to talking about ceilings, because any hypothetical draftee can become an all-star if Nikola Jokic with the 41st pick can become an MVP, so never rule anything out. But I think a realistic ceiling for Keegan Murray is being a high-caliber role player, a Tobias Harris, a Jeremy Grant type of offensive forward that can also defend a bit. Now, when we talk about draft range for Keegan Murray, there's some rumors that the Kings are looking at him at number 4. Sacramento, for your own sake, please don't take Keegan Murray at 4. You need to swing for more upside and the more obvious pick. And given your guys' track record in the past, I could see the Kings going Keegan Murray, and then he's just a solid role player, but not somebody you take at number 4 overall. If I'm drafting in the top 7 or 8, I want a guy who has a chance to become an all-star, and like a solid chance to become an all-star. With Keegan Murray, I just don't really see that, so I don't have him in my top 7 or 8. If there is a team at 7, maybe like the Golden State Warriors, who were at 7 last year, and just looking for a guy that could potentially push them over the edge in terms of helping them win a championship, then I'm okay drafting Keegan Murray at 7 or 8 or 6. But given the teams that are there, I think every team in the top 7 needs to swing for some sort of upside. Now, with this being said, I fully expect Keegan Murray to go in the top 7. If he's there at 7, I think Portland ends up taking him, and Portland is a team that's trying to win now, so maybe that'd make more sense. But to Indiana at 6, I think they need to swing for some upside. You could have a Shaedon Sharpe or a Jaden Ivey on the board. If not, maybe a Benedict Mathurin, maybe a Dyson Daniels. I think both those guys possess more realistic upside than a Keegan Murray. They just have lower floors. Same thing with Detroit at 5. They, in my opinion, should take one of Shaedon Sharpe or Jaden Ivey, whichever one is left on the board. Both those guys have noticeably more upside than a Keegan Murray. Shaedon Sharpe is more of a mystery, and he's kind of the opposite type of prospect of a Keegan Murray. He could end up being a bust. Nobody really knows much about him, but if you watch him for 5 minutes, you can see the upside with a guy like that. And I think it would be a mistake for Detroit to pass on Sharpe or Jaden Ivey, given that they're very likely going to have their choice of either of them at 5, and if not, then they have Banchero, Jabari Smith, or Chet Holmgren on the board. Starting at 8 with New Orleans is where I'm more comfortable with Keegan Murray being drafted. He could come into New Orleans right away and be somebody that helps their team. The New Orleans made the playoffs last year, assumedly have Zion Williamson coming back next year. So with Ingram at the 3 and Williamson at the 4, it's hard to see what Keegan Murray's role would be. You also have Herb Jones, a rookie from last year, who's really good for them at a forward spot as well. So you would potentially create a little bit of a logjam there, but if New Orleans is trying to get as good as possible, as fast as possible, Keegan Murray could be the right choice there at 8, and maybe you play Zion more as a small ball 5, maybe you play Ingram more at a shooting guard position, and just try and work around that. At 9 to San Antonio, I think Keegan Murray makes sense from a positional standpoint, but San Antonio, with 3 of their first round picks, I think they need to swing for upside with 1 or 2 of them. They have a lot of middling prospects that don't really have a high upside on the roster already. A lot of them are at a guard or a wing position, so I wouldn't hate Keegan Murray at 9 for them, because they need some depth at the forward position after all the perimeter players that they've drafted in the past few years. I just think San Antonio's kind of stuck right now, and they need to swing for the fences and try and find a guy who they think they could develop into an all-star. Maybe that's a Keegan Murray, but I think they need to swing for the fences with 1 or 2 of their picks. So if they draft Keegan Murray at 9 and swing for the fences with the 20th and 25th picks, then I'm completely happy with Keegan Murray for them at 9. If they go for more role player type of prospects at 20 and 25, then I will be disappointed disappointed in their draft, and I will be sitting here saying they should have swung for more upside at 9. But I think Keegan Murray doesn't fall that far. I think he ends up going in the top 7, and I think he could go as high as 4 to Sacramento. Sacramento apparently is trying to win now, and that thinking just doesn't seem like it'll work out for them. Nothing seems to work out for the Kings, so hopefully they don't mess up this draft, because I'm starting to feel pretty bad for Kings fans at this point. Anyway, that wraps up Keegan Murray's draft profile. Let me know what you think about him down in the comment section below. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, as always, peace out. Go Blazers!